So far we've looked at changing the HTML page by modifying the attributes that are associated with different nodes that we have selected. Well, we can also change more than that. We can change the HTML itself if we choose to. Let's take a look at some of the techniques that are available in order to do that. First off, we have an attribute associated with each node named inner HTML. Basically, inner HTML is the contents of that node, not including the tag. So not including the tag that defined that element in the HTML page. When that node is grabbed, inner HTML then represents what's inside of that tag. Now that can include other tags. For example, if the node were the body tag, then it would not include the two outer body tags, but it would include everything else that is inside of the body. So that's inner HTML. Outer HTML, which was standardized with HTML5, is very similar to inner HTML. The main difference is it includes those outer tags. And then finally we have insert adjacent HTML. This method, which is associated with each node, allows you to insert at certain locations inside that node. Now that location is the first parameter you pass in. There are 4 possible values for that, and we'll look at those values in just a second. The second parameter that gets passed in is what you want to insert. And both of those are specified as a string. Now this too is standardized for HTML5. Now let's take a look at the 4 possible values for location. Here I have a div tag. It has an ID attribute set to content, and then it has some text in between the opening and closing div tag. Now the 4 possible values which we can use for location in insert adjacent HTML is before begin, after begin, before end, and after end. And this graphic identifies where each of those will insert the string that we've specified. So before begin and after end are on the outside of the tag, one before it, one after it. After begin and before end are on the inside of the tag. One at the start, of course, one at the end. So these are some techniques for modifying the HTML. Now let's look at how we might use them. So let's pull up our selecting exercise again, and also the console. And I'll have the console docked at the bottom so we can see what changes occur. First off, I want to just illustrate the difference between outer HTML and inner HTML. So first I'm going to select the first li tag. It has an ID of B1. Therefore, using query selector and the hash symbol, I indicate that I want the tag with an ID of B1. And then a dot inner HTML. So I want to display what the inner HTML is for that. So I press return. You can see that it is the text portion of the li tag. So if I jump out here to the HTML page, here's the li tag right here. So inner HTML is this portion. Now let's try that again, but I'm going to do B4 because I'm going to do the outer HTML and then the inner HTML because I want you to see that it includes the tag which is inside of the li tag. So up arrow to bring that back. Let's change this to B4. Let's go ahead and look at the inner HTML first, and then we'll change it to outer HTML. I press return, and as you can see, it is the contents between the opening and closing tag. And it includes the span tag, which is a part of that. Now let's take a look at outer HTML. And we can see there that now the li tag with all of its attributes are included. So that's the difference between inner HTML and outer HTML. Now, let's use this and also insert adjacent HTML to make some changes to this page. So first, let's select, using query selector all, of the li tags. So first I'm going to specify the class, and then inside that class I want to get the ul tag and then li tags. And we're doing query selector all, so it's going to get all of them. Just to see we can display all nodes. And we have all the li tags there. All right. Now let's use inner HTML to make a change to the second li tag. I'm going to change items to elements, and I'm going to emphasize the term elements. So let's look at how that would be done. So I'll use all nodes, the variable that I placed all of those in, and I'm going to select 1. Because remember, query selector all returns an array of nodes. Therefore, if I want the second node, that would be a 1. Then dot inner HTML equals, I'm going to replace everything that's inside of that tag. So that's equal to, you can select different. And now here's where I'm making my change. And I'm going to use an emphasis tag to put emphasis on the word elements. And then finish out that statement, and we can press return. And notice the change has been made up above. It has emphasized the word elements, and also the entire text has been changed. So inner HTML has been around for a while, and inner HTML is a great way to make changes to specific nodes. Now insert adjacent HTML gives you a little bit more power, because you can specify where you want to insert the text or the HTML that you want to place into the node. To these 3 li tags, let's add a piece of information at the end of them. So all nodes, do the first one, which is referenced with 2. Insert adjacent HTML, and we're going to use before end. Before end because we want it to be a part of the tag, not outside the tag, and we just want to add it to the end. So we could have used inner HTML and rewritten this whole thing, but using insert adjacent HTML, we're able to place it after the period here. Comma, and here's the text I want to insert. This is simply the method that allows us to select by ID. Sure enough, that adds it at the end. Now we can quickly modify this. Oops. Also modify which node we're referring to. And one more time, modify the node we're referring to. And for class, it's get element by class name. All right, we've just changed those 3 li tags by adding additional text to them. All right, let's look at one more example. In this case, let's add an additional li tag, so a 6th item in this list. And let's use insert adjacent HTML to do that. We will have to use a different location. We're going to put it at the bottom, so we will use after end for the insert. So we're going to use all nodes, and we're going to refer to the last node. Insert adjacent HTML, and now we're going to use after end. And then here's what we'll insert. Since we're adding a new li tag, we have to specify all the HTML for that. I'm giving it an ID of B6. Notice I'm using single quotes because I'm using the quotes inside of double quotes already, and so I can't use double quotes or it'll cause the string to terminate there, and then we'll get an error. So I'm using single quotes because I'm using double quotes to specify the string. So ID equals B6, and I'm also going to set the style. The reason I'm doing that, because when I come to this page, I press the down arrow key and I have some JavaScript that changes the visibility of each of the li tags so that they show up. And that JavaScript simply sets the style visibility property to visible. Like this. Now that goes inside single quotes as well. Now we can close the li tag and type the text. So I'm simply going to put query selector and query selector all can do all three. And then we close the li tag. Whoops. And our double quotes, parentheses, and then semicolon. Let's go ahead and insert that and see how it works. Now if I scroll down, sure enough, it shows up as one more item within that list. So there's some examples of using inner HTML and insert adjacent HTML for modifying the text and HTML portions of each node. Now before I leave this video, some people prefer to work just with the text and not deal with the HTML at all, and that's possible. There is an attribute associated with the node called inner text, and so it refers to just the text, not to the HTML that could be a part of it as well. However, this is not supported by all browsers. For example, on Firefox, you have to use text content instead of inner text. So if you choose to use this to work just with text, I prefer inner HTML or insert adjacent HTML, but if you would like to try this, you'll need to do something like this in your JavaScript code. Because you don't know what browser people will be using, you should first use an if statement to check if inner text is available on that node. Using the truthy and falsy that we talked about with if conditionals, if inner text is available, it will result to true. Therefore, you then go ahead and use inner text to set the text to what you want it to be. Else you use text content to do that. And that would mean that it's in a Firefox browser. So that's something you can use if you choose to. In the next video, we'll discuss one more concept for making changes to an HTML page.